Hi friends, I'm back with a longer book tonight. These are the coolest little books. What are they called? Oh, Who Is... They have a whole series of them. They're really cool. It's like history books on a bunch of different people. And this one is Who Is RuPaul? Yeah, there's a lot of cool ones there at the library. This is by Nico Medina. Who is RuPaul? On September 18th, 2016, RuPaul made television history, or herstory as Ru would say. A drag queen, most commonly a man who dresses up and performs as a woman, had never won an Emmy until then. Emmys are awards for excellence in TV programming as chosen by the Television Academy. Backstage, RuPaul held back tears as he spoke about all the kids who watched the show, how it had helped them to navigate their lives. The show he was talking about was RuPaul's Drag Race. Ru is both the host and judge of the reality competition show of drag queens from across the United States. The queens all share a passion for performing in drag and compete against one another for a cash prize and the title of America's Next Drag Superstar. According to Ru, drag isn't something unusual to be feared or looked down upon. Everybody within the sound of my voice is in drag. Right now, whether they know it or not, RuPaul has said. What Ru means is when anyone puts on clothing, they are getting into some form of costume, some type of drag. When you go to school, you don't put on your bathing suit. Maybe you put on a uniform. You wear what is expected for a student to wear. People dress in drag to go to work, to weddings, out to dinner. RuPaul says we're all born naked and the rest is drag. What Ru means is that we're all the same and life is a performance. By the time RuPaul's Drag Race won its first Emmy for Outstanding Reality Competition Program in 2018, 140 drag queens had competed on the show. Many have gone on to have successful careers and thousands of fans of their own. We celebrate people who dance outside the box, RuPaul said after the win. Their stories need to be told, and I think there is value in those stories for everyone, not just drag queens. RuPaul had traveled a long road to get to that moment. More than 35 years before he had put on his first wig, it had been over 25 years since Ru's song Supermodel, You Better Work had hit the airwaves and made him the world's most famous drag queen. And it was 9 years since Drag Race's television debut. But RuPaul had always known he would be famous. Ru has said that to become a star, you need to believe you're a star, and eventually other people will start believing it too. As a child in the 1960s, RuPaul hadn't seen many people like him, people who were gay, even people who were black on popular TV shows. But things had changed for the better, and Ru had been a part of that change. I have always been a creative person, Ru said. I've always been able to see different colors that other people were ignoring. How had RuPaul, who came from a very humble beginnings, become such a superstar? This is his and her story. He, she, or they, drag is for everyone. RuPaul was once asked if he wished he'd been born a woman. No, Ru answered. He was happy to be a man. It is a common misunderstanding that drag queens are men who wish to be women. When RuPaul dresses in drag, he is performing a character. Ru once joked, "You can call me he, you can call me she, as long as you call me." Some drag queens, however, are transgender or non-binary. For trans people, their gender, how they feel on the inside, is different from the sex, male or female, they were assigned at birth. Non-binary people do not identify as entirely male or entirely female. These queens might prefer to be called she or they rather than he when not performing in drag. Drag kings are people, usually women, who dress and perform as men. Women can be drag queens too. Drag is for anyone who wants to express themselves through a character. Chapter 1. I Accept My Destiny. RuPaul's full name is RuPaul Andre Charles. His mother, Ernestine Tony Charles, knew this was an unusual name. Before RuPaul was even born, a fortune teller had told Tony that her son would be famous. So she named him RuPaul because she said, "Ain't another with a name like that." Tony and RuPaul's father, Irving, were both from Louisiana. They had met on a blind date. Soon after, they moved to Houston, Texas, and got married. Ru's older twin sisters, Renee and Renetta, were born in 1953. Irving Charles had served in the Army and fought in the Korean War. After the Army, Irving moved the family out west to San Diego, California, where he worked as an electrician. The Charles family moved into a 3-bedroom house. Irving built a patio out back. RuPaul was born on November 17th, 1960. His younger sister, Rosie, was born 2 years later. Ru stew. According to RuPaul, the Ru in his name comes from the word roux. Roux is a mixture of flour and butter and is cooked together and used to thicken soups and stews. A roux is used to make gumbo, a hearty Creole dish of sausage, shrimp, other meats, and vegetables. RuPaul's mother was Creole. Creole people are a mixed descent: Black, African and Caribbean, European, mostly French and Spanish, and sometimes Native American. Creoles have lived in Louisiana since long before it became part of the United States in 1803. Life in the Charles house was not always easy. RuPaul's parents fought and yelled a lot. When RuPaul was 7, his parents divorced. His mother became so upset that one day she didn't get out of bed. That's when Ru's older sisters, Renee and Renetta, became the grown-ups in the house. They took care of Ru and Rosie while Tony got the help she needed. Eventually, Tony got better and found a good, steady job. She worked at a clinic, then later at a local college. Young RuPaul also knew that he was different from most boys his age. He was quiet and sensitive. He also loved the cigar commercials on television that featured glamorous women in sparkling evening gowns performing to Broadway-style music. When he was 4, RuPaul saw something on television that changed his life forever. Diana Ross and the Supremes, a popular music group at the time, appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show and performed their hit song, Baby Love. Ru was captivated. For one thing, seeing 3 black women on a program like Ed Sullivan's was unusual in the early 1960s, and RuPaul saw himself in Diana Ross, the dazzling lead singer, with her perfect hair, beautiful dress, and big, bright smile. He remembers thinking that one there, the one in the middle, that's me. He knew then that he wanted to be famous, the center of attention, just like Diana. RuPaul preferred to be around girls rather than boys. He thought that girls and women expressed their emotions and feelings more than boys did, and he liked to play dress-up in their clothes. "You should have been a girl, and your sister Rosie should have been a boy," some bullies said to him. The hurtful comments sometimes made RuPaul cry. Still, RuPaul always did what made him happy. He entertained. Ru's mom and sisters were his first audience. "Do your thing," Tony would tell him, and Ru would stand up and sing and dance just like the big stars of the day. People like Tina Turner, Cher, and Elvis Presley. RuPaul looked up to his mom. He loved her simple yet elegant style, and even though Tony could be tough, she also had a sweet and sensitive side. She had the strength of a man and the heart of a woman. RuPaul was not afraid to be himself and look different from everybody else. When he was 10, he bleached and braided his hair. At one point, he had a red afro, 17 inches deep. Ru attended Alonzo E. Horton Elementary School, just a block from his house, from kindergarten through 6th grade. In 7th grade, he took acting lessons at the local children's theater. Ru loved it so much he signed up for drama at his new middle school. But aside from the drama classes, Ru was not the best student. He often got caught staring out the classroom windows and daydreaming. RuPaul would rather be home reading his magazines about Hollywood movie stars, New York City celebrities, and Motown musicians like the Supremes. He loved everything about pop culture and the cool fashion, movies, music, and art that was popular at the time. Ru sometimes tagged along with his older sisters when they visited their friends, Aletha and Deborah. Their mom worked as a maid on the other side of town, so the kids would have the house to themselves in the afternoons. They could listen to records and sing and dance as loud as they wanted to. By the time he entered high school, tall, thin, and freckly, RuPaul really stood out from the crowd. With his soft facial features, he was sometimes mistaken for a girl. In the mornings before class, RuPaul attended breakfast club at the cafeteria. Donuts, chips, and chocolate milk were served, and the tables and chairs were pushed aside to make room for the students to dance. RuPaul remembers one morning watching from the sidelines as everyone did a dance called the bump. Then one day, he and his friend Michelle showed off a move no one at the breakfast club had seen before. It was called the crypt walk, the latest dance craze from Los Angeles. Ru had seen Olivia Newton-John, one of his favorite singer-actresses, perform it on TV. Soon everyone was doing the crypt walk. That school year, Ru was voted the best dancer and best afro by his 9th grade classmates. Thinking back on that day, Ru later said that was his way of saying to the universe, I accept my destiny. He was born to entertain. What did RuPaul do after introducing the crypt walk to his classmates? Well, he did not go to class. In fact, RuPaul skipped so many classes he was expelled. What would he do now? The family decided it was best for Ru to move in with his sister Renetta and her husband Lawrence. Lawrence was a serious young man with dreams of his own. He was a good role model for RuPaul. He earned a scholarship at the University of California, San Diego, and he dreamed big. Lawrence loved to drive around La Jolla, a wealthy neighborhood on the coast, and looked at all the big houses. Sometimes he and Renetta brought her family along. RuPaul liked Lawrence. He was the big brother Ru never had, a father figure even. But just 6 months after RuPaul moved in with Renetta and Lawrence, the couple decided to move 2,000 miles away to Atlanta, Georgia. There were more opportunities there, Lawrence said. Would RuPaul like to join them? Sure, he said. Why not? Chapter 2. RuPaul is Everything. In the summer of 1976, 15-year-old RuPaul arrived in Atlanta. He enrolled at the Northside School of Performing Arts, eager to start acting again. Ru's drama teacher, Bill Pannell, taught him and his classmates about method acting, how to become a character from the inside out. Mr. Pannell was passionate, and even though he expected a lot from his students, he once told RuPaul, don't take life too seriously. Ru said this was some of the best advice he had ever received. Whatever problems he might have, life was a gift to be enjoyed. Other people's problems might be much worse than your own. One problem RuPaul did not have was getting noticed. The funky new kid from California developed a reputation for his bright, bold outfits. Ru used Renetta's sewing machine to make his own clothes. Stripes, plaid, a cowboy hat, why not all three? Ru still had problems, however, with school. He continued to skip class, and when he did attend, he was often late. After failing his sophomore year, Ru switched schools, but he never graduated. RuPaul went to work for Lawrence, who had started a business buying luxury cars from around the country and selling them in Atlanta. After Lawrence made a sale over the phone, RuPaul would fly to wherever the car was and drive it back to Atlanta. Ru said he must have driven across the country more than 100 times. He listened to the radio and sang the whole time. In 1978, Ru attended his first drag show in Atlanta at a club called Numbers. Drag shows feature drag queens telling jokes, dancing, and performing popular songs either by singing them or by lip-syncing them. Mouthing the words to a song but not singing them aloud. RuPaul remembers seeing a drag queen lip-sync a disco hit called Bad Girls by Donna Summer. The performance was so good, Ru thought he was watching the real Donna Summer on stage. RuPaul was hooked. He went back to as many drag shows as he could. In 1981, RuPaul saw a local TV program called The American Music Show. It featured a cast of wacky characters with a weird sense of humor that RuPaul could relate to. Ru wrote a letter to the host, Dick Richards, asking if he could come on the show. Lucky for Ru, Dick said yes. House and ball culture. The drag queen RuPaul saw that night at Numbers was Crystal Labeza from New York City. Like many black and brown gay teenagers, Crystal had been rejected by her family, so in 1977, she founded the House of Labeza, opening her home as a place where people like her could live together as their own chosen and supportive family. Other drag houses followed. Houses competed as teams against rival houses at drag ball events that were held mainly in the black neighborhood of Harlem. Drag balls had taken place in Harlem as early as the 1860s, as well into the 1920s. Wow. and well into the 1920s, continuing for decades. But the scene grew significantly during the 1980s. The beauty and drama of Harlem's ball and house culture was captured in 1990 by the documentary film Paris is Burning, and later in the TV drama Pose. I didn't know any of that. That's super cool. RuPaul says that that letter was... Oh, okay. Was the true beginning of his career in showbiz. Before his appearance, RuPaul was helping two girlfriends move into a new apartment. He drove the U-Haul moving truck. Struck by inspiration, RuPaul told his friends that they should start a dance group called RuPaul and the U-Hauls, and that they should join him on the American music show. And so they did. In January 1982, RuPaul and the U-Hauls made their Atlanta television debut. RuPaul made all their costumes, and they performed a dance routine to the song Shotgun by Junior Walker and the All-Stars. RuPaul felt like a star that day. Ru and the U-Hauls went on to appear regularly on the American music show. Dick Richards created a new show called Dancerama USA, which featured a segment called Learn a Dance with RuPaul. RuPaul was becoming well known around the Atlanta music scene. He began performing with other acts. It was one of those shows that RuPaul dressed in drag for. It was at one of those shows that RuPaul dressed in drag for the first time. A local group called the Now Explosion sometimes acted out a wedding during their performances. At these pretend ceremonies, the boys in the band dressed as bridesmaids and the girls wore tuxedos. RuPaul joined them for one of these weddings. It was the first time I did real drag in a dress, heels, and with hair, RuPaul said. He had never even put on a wig before. The impact it had on people was amazing. It made RuPaul feel amazing, too. RuPaul wanted everyone to know just how much of a star he was. So he made posters of himself with phrases like, RuPaul is everything, and RuPaul is red hot. He put up hundreds of copies all over town. At this time, RuPaul began performing in drag more often, but besides the Now Explosion wedding, he rarely dressed like a woman in the traditional sense. He wore smeared lipstick and messy wigs, ripped t-shirts and combat boots, sometimes even tall wading boots like fishermen wore. It had nothing to do with being gay or with wanting to be a woman, RuPaul said. It was about challenging how people thought about the world. He wanted people to look at things in a different way when they watched him perform. RuPaul moved into his own apartment. After RuPaul and the U-Hauls broke up, Ru formed a punk rock group with two other friends. They performed around Atlanta and up and down the East Coast, and even played in New York City. The band broke up in 1984. That year, RuPaul met a local drag queen named Bunny while dancing backup for the Now Explosion. They became fast friends and shopped together at local thrift stores, looking for cheap used clothes to turn into wild outfits. They didn't want sparkly evening gowns or any of that polish, Bunny said. They were both rock and roll queens. We broke all the rules, RuPaul said. Ru continued to host events and put on shows around Atlanta. He sold short books he had written and postcards to anyone who would buy them. Some nights he sold every copy he had. Ru, Bunny, and their friends also made campy home movies and sold copies of them around town. People use the word camp to mean something that is done in an exaggerated, theatrical, and often silly style. But RuPaul knew he was destined for bigger things. He remembered being 12 years old back in San Diego, reading issue after issue of Andy Warhol's Interview magazine. Ru had learned that to make it big, he would first have to become a downtown New York celebrity. Chapter 3, Ups and Downs. In the summer of 1984, RuPaul put together a show called RuPaul is Red Hot. Bunny and a few other Atlanta drag queens joined as co-stars. They traveled to New York City to perform Ru's show at the Pyramid Club in the city's East Village neighborhood. After the run of shows ended, Ru and his friends decided to stay in New York. They met an old friend of Dick Richards from back in Atlanta named Nelson, who showed them around the city. Nelson introduced them to the work of the creative queer people who had come before them, like playwright Tennessee Williams and author Truman Capote. Nelson also carried a video camera, and RuPaul was always happy to put on a performance. In one video, RuPaul tells the camera, "I'm gonna take off like a stick of dynamite." But life in New York wasn't easy. Rue and Bunny made $40 a night dancing at the Pyramid Club, but Rue didn't have a place to live. Some nights he stayed with Nelson or other friends. Other nights he and Floyd, another friend from Atlanta, would stay out all night, then sleep in parks during the day. Come Christmas time, Floyd and Rue decided to return home. Bunny stayed in New York, changed her name to the Lady Bunny, and founded Wigstock in 1984. This drag queen performance festival soon grew to attract thousands of people every year. In 1985, RuPaul began to rethink his act in Atlanta. Dick Richards offered him a record deal. Rue starred in local theater productions and more than a dozen movies. He sold video cassettes of the films out of shopping carts at local bars and clubs. One of Rue's movie characters, a fashion model who was also an undercover spy named Star Booty, starred in 3 movies. Rue, with his massive mohawk and creative self-designed looks, gave each performance his signature over-the-top best, and it was always in his contract that RuPaul's name appeared above the movie title. After all, he was the star. Rue also worked at a local gay bar called Weekends. When the bar owners reopened the old movie theater next door, RuPaul began to MC or host drag pageants and lip-syncing competitions there. He watched videos of himself on stage to improve his skills as an entertainer. Rue called this his time at Weekends his college years. By 1987, Rue had really made a name for himself in Atlanta, but he was growing restless. It was time to give New York another try. That summer, he and a couple of friends, DJ Larry T and another Atlanta drag queen called Lahoma, piled into a van to make the journey. On the drive, one of the back tires blew out and the van flipped over, their belongings scattered across the highway. No one was hurt, but this felt like a sign of things to come. Finding success in New York City was no easier the second time around for RuPaul. By the spring of 1988, he was back in Atlanta. Although Rue returned to New York again that summer, things were just not happening the way he had hoped. Rue tried his luck in Los Angeles next, moving in with his younger sister Rosie. But he couldn't find work, and Rosie gave him until November 17th, his 28th birthday, to find a new place to live. It was a dark and difficult time. Rue went to San Diego to spend the holidays with his mother. But where would he go from there? First, he rested. He quit smoking and grew a beard. He spent time getting to know his 11-year-old niece Morgan. He ate well and he relaxed. Rue also talked on the phone with DJ Larry T, who, after more than a year in New York, had found success in the nightclub scene. Larry told RuPaul that he was a star and that Rue should come back. He offered to help Rue out when he arrived. So in the new year, RuPaul returned to New York City yet again. But this time, it would be different. Chapter 4, Queen of Manhattan. In the New York nightclub scene in 1989, the trendy look for drag queens was realness. That meant that queens looked less camp and more like real women. So RuPaul reinvented himself. He traded in his mohawk for a big blonde wig. He shaved his legs and no more ripped t-shirts and wading boots. When RuPaul walked into a club, he wanted to be the most glamorous, gorgeous woman in the room. The late 1980s and early 1990s marked the era of the club kids. The club kids were party promoters whose job was to bring crowds into nightclubs. Before going out on the town, the club kids would dress up in outrageous, imaginative, and attention-grabbing looks. They used their creativity to turn these parties into must-see events that no one wanted to miss. A club kid was a little crazier than a drag queen, Lady Bunny said. They might dress up as an alien or a dog bowl from the waist up and a policeman from the waist down. But club kids were about more than dressing up, RuPaul said. They were about people being free spirits. Club kid culture would go on to inspire the drag, art, and fashion worlds for years beyond the 1990s. While RuPaul didn't dress like the club kids, he became just as well known in the New York City nightclubs. At 7 feet tall in heels and hair, he was hard to miss. Suzanne Bartsch, who became the mother of all club kids and continues to throw parties today, hired Rue to dance at some of her legendary events. RuPaul gave it his all every single time. He didn't just dance, he performed. RuPaul was a show all by himself. Suzanne clearly respected Rue's talent. She told him that he had what it took to become a true pop star. The summer after Rue returned to New York, Larry T started throwing a new party called the Love Machine. Larry paid RuPaul $100 a week to host shows, lip sync, and dance there. Everybody say love, Ru would call out at the partygoers. Love! Everyone would shout back. Lady Bunny, Floyd, and Lahoma, all of Ru's Atlanta friends, made the Love Machine their home base. Their easy southern charm took New York by storm, and the Love Machine quickly became the hottest party in town. Around this time, the B-52s, a pop music group from back home in Georgia, asked RuPaul to appear in a music video for their hit song Love Shack. Ru showed up to the video shoot in an all-white two-piece jumpsuit, bright gold jewelry, and a large afro wig. He brought his dance party energy to the set. By January 1990, a year after moving back to New York, RuPaul was becoming very well known. A group of downtown club owners and party promoters named him Queen of Manhattan. This was a big deal in New York nightlife community, and Ru was the first black person to earn the title. At last, RuPaul had arrived. But with success came pressure. RuPaul was living a fast-paced life, and for years he had turned to drugs and alcohol during his long party-filled nights. So as his reign of Queen of Manhattan came to a close at the end of 1990, RuPaul decided to quit his bad habits and reinvent himself once again. Chapter 5, Supermodel of the World. In 1991, RuPaul joined World of Wonder, a production company founded by Randy Barbado and Fenton Bailey. Randon and Fenton had met RuPaul in New York in the early 1980s and had produced his Star Booty album. Now they became Ru's managers. Soon, Ru had a contract with Tommy Boy Records. RuPaul got busy writing new music. He was also promoting I Got That Feeling, a new song he and Larry T had written in the year before. But when Ru performed Feelings for the audiences, he didn't appear in his signature glamorous drag queen looks. RuPaul didn't think the world beyond New York City club scene was ready for a drag queen to be a pop star. But people kept asking what had happened to his Star Booty character. RuPaul began to realize that his fans really wanted to see him perform in drag. Ru had never imagined he would become famous by performing in drag, but he decided to go all out. If this was what his fans wanted, he would give them the longest legs, the highest shoes, and the biggest hair he could. He would give them a supermodel of the world. In the early 1990s, fashion models like Naomi Campbell, Linda Evangelista, Claudia Schiffer, and Christy Turlington were major international celebrities. These supermodels posed in exotic locations around the world for stylish fashion shoots. They earned large salaries and were photographed wherever they went. RuPaul's newest song, Supermodel, You Better Work, captured the excitement of the moment. Ru premiered it with a live performance at Lady Bunny's Wigstock Festival on Labor Day 1992. The single was released on Ru's birthday in November of that year. A full album, Supermodel of the World, followed in 1993. In the Supermodel music video, RuPaul plays a model on a photo shoot in New York City. She strikes poses for the camera. She splashes around in a fountain in front of famous Plaza Hotel. She struts down the sidewalk with a group of schoolgirls like they were walking a fashion show runway. Perhaps remembering his drama teacher, Mr. Panel's advice, RuPaul also had fun in the video, not taking herself too seriously as she lip-synced to the catchy lyrics. She made silly, exaggerated faces for the camera. Supermodel became a hit, reaching number 2 of the dance charts. MTV, a cable network that showed music videos, aired the video over and over again. Most people around the country had never seen a drag queen before, in person or on television, but there was RuPaul, front and center, 7 feet of legs, heels, hair, and attitude. RuPaul appeared on the Arsenio Hall show, a popular late-night talk show. Backstage, he was nervous, but then Ru remembered all the years of practice he's had performing for the camera, entertaining audiences and making people feel good. After performing Supermodel, Ru sat down to chat with Arsenio and the studio audience. Ru had everyone laughing, but he also delivered a serious, heartfelt message. Everybody is really the same, RuPaul said. Everybody wants to be loved and should be respected. That love, he said, started with loving yourself. Ru said he was lucky his family accepted him for who he was because there were many other gay people, children and adults, who couldn't say the same. He hoped that by appearing on the program like Arsenio's, he might inspire people watching at home. The same way that seeing a young black woman like Diana Ross on the Ed Sullivan Show had inspired him. Everybody say love, he called to the crowd. Love, they responded. America was only just meeting RuPaul, but RuPaul had worked his whole life for this moment. He was no newcomer. From rowdy Atlanta bars to smoky New York City nightclubs, he had put in the time and effort. Just like Ru's song says, if you want to be a supermodel, you better work. I'm going to read this part too. It says, a brief history of drag. Dressing in the traditional clothing of the opposite sex, called cross-dressing, has existed throughout history. Ancient civilizations, from the Egyptians to the Aztecs, incorporated cross-dressing into religious ceremonies. During William Shakespeare's time, women's role on stage were played by men. The word drag may have originated in the 1800s theater scene because the men's dresses would drag on the floor. In the early 1900s, female impersonation, men performing as women, became popularized in live vaudeville acts, which combine music, dance, and comedy. Female impersonation by non-queer men continued in movies like Some Like It Hot in 1959 and Mrs. Doubtfire in 1993. Drag became more closely connected with gay culture during Prohibition in the 1920s, when liquor was outlawed in the United States, and queer people, including drag queens, met in secret, illegal bars called speakeasies. Drag continued to evolve in local gay bars before going nationwide in 1972 with the first Miss Gay America pageant. Okay. Chapter 6, Windows of Opportunity. In Atlanta, RuPaul was everything. At the Pyramid Club, RuPaul was red hot, and now RuPaul was everywhere. The song Supermodel played at New York Fashion Week runway shows. It was used in a commercial for Duracell batteries. RuPaul performed it at the Cannes Film Festival in France. He presented at the MTV Music Video Awards, and Ru's year-long concert tour played to packed crowds across the United States and Europe. A few years earlier, after RuPaul had moved back in with his mom in San Diego, Tony told her son, everything will change, so pay it no mind. She sure was right. What a difference 5 years had made. The world had changed a lot in that time, too. Queer people everywhere, people who were gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender, were coming out of the closet. They were declaring to friends, family, and to the world who they truly were and who they loved, and they were demanding to be treated equally. On April 25th, 1993, as many as 1 million people joined the March of Washington on Washington for lesbian, gay, and bi equal rights and liberation. They had come to the nation's capital to protest laws that discriminated against queer people, and they called on Bill Clinton, the newly elected president, to fulfill his promises to the queer community and to fight on their behalf. RuPaul took the stage in a red, white, and blue Wonder Woman-inspired look as Supermodel blasted from the speakers. A cloud of dust rose as thousands rushed toward the stage. He couldn't believe where he was, gazing toward the Washington Monument. The National Mall stretched out before him. There, Ru was standing in the same spot where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his famous I Have a Dream speech in 1963. RuPaul realized he now had a responsibility to the queer community. His days of running wild from club to club were over, still never one to take things too seriously. After the song ended, RuPaul told the crowd that he'd be back one day to paint the White House pink. After his performance, Ru received a terrible phone call. His mother had passed away, Tony had been ill for a while, and Ru had known this day was coming. Still, he was heartbroken. Tony had been one of his original inspirations, his first true fan, and the person who always believed in him. And now she was gone. But RuPaul carried on. I'll read this part too. The March on Washington in 1963, the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s saw African Americans fighting through peaceful protest for equal rights and protection under the law. Across the South, Jim Crow laws had separated the races, from hotels and restaurants to train cars and drinking fountains, and people had had enough. Those who opposed equal rights for Black Americans often responded violently, injuring, sometimes killing the activists who were calling for change. With new laws stalled in the United States Congress, The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom was organized by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other leaders to demand that these laws be passed. The demonstration took place on August 28, 1963, on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. More than 250,000 people attended. In 1994, Ru met his future husband, Georges, or is it Jorge? I don't know. George LaBar, at the Limelight nightclub in New York City. Georges was dancing like a maniac when RuPaul approached him and asked if he could put his arm around him. Georges is 6 feet 8 inches tall, and Ru was not used to people being taller than he was, and Georges said yes. Throughout history, there are windows of opportunity, Ru once said. During the early 1990s, there was an openness happening in America, and RuPaul took full advantage. RuPaul, the first drag queen to be named spokesperson for a major makeup line, Max Viva Glam, he published a book about his life called Lettin' It All Hang Out. He hosted a morning radio talk show with Michelle Visage, an old club kid friend. In 1994, Ru made his feature film debut in Spike Lee's Crooklyn, followed by the Brady Bunch movie and TV shows like Sister Sister. In 1995, he appeared in To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. The movie featured John Leguizamo, Patrick Swayze, and Wesley Snipes, male lead actors known for their roles in comedy, romance, and action movies, all playing drag queens. Drag culture had come to Hollywood. Okay. But not all the attention Ru received was positive. Tabloid newspapers published untrue stories about him. Their headlines poked fun at him. He became the butt of jokes on popular TV and radio shows. But RuPaul always took comfort in the advice Tony had given him when he was teased in school. Unless they're paying your bills, pay them no mind. From 1996 to 1998, RuPaul, along with his co-host Michelle Visage, hosted 100 episodes of The RuPaul Show on the cable channel VH1. He was the first openly gay man and certainly the first drag queen to host a talk show. The RuPaul Show featured big-name guests like the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, as well as Ru's childhood idols, Olivia Newton-John, Cher, and of course Diana Ross. How much higher could RuPaul's star rise? Chapter 7. Start Your Engines. RuPaul moved to Los Angeles in 1998 and continued releasing music into the early 2000s. But while new songs like Looking Good, Feeling Gorgeous were played on the dance radio stations and in nightclubs, nothing reached the same level of success as Supermodel. Ru took time away from the spotlight to recharge. Despite his glamorous public personality, RuPaul was really a quiet and shy person at heart. Ru went on hikes and hosted barbecues. He spent time with George's friends and family. Ru's longtime friends and collaborators at World of Wonder, Fenton Bailey, and Randy Barbado were wondering what would come next for RuPaul. They had lots of ideas, but nothing seemed right. Fenton remembers Ru once telling him, "I'll do anything but a competition and elimination show." But by 2008, Ru had changed his mind. In the 15 years since Supermodel, no other drag queen had risen to RuPaul's level of fame. It was time to bring drag culture back to the mainstream, out of big city nightclubs and into people's living rooms. And so RuPaul's Drag Race was born. Drag racing is a race between two cars to see which driver crosses the finish line first. Courses are straight roads called drag strips and are usually about 1/4 of a mile long. Naming the show Drag Race was a fun way to use a term people were familiar with for something that had never been seen on TV before. According to Ru, Drag Race was a way to celebrate the art of drag and to put a face and an emotion behind it. RuPaul had already told the world his story, but there were thousands of other lesser-known drag queens across the country who had their own voices and stories to tell. Ru wanted to give them the opportunity to inspire young people to be themselves and follow their dreams. The first season of RuPaul's Drag Race premiered in February 2009 on Logo, a cable TV channel that aired mostly queer content. The show featured 9 drag queens competing to win a prize package that included being named America's Next Drag Superstar. RuPaul had described the show as a mix between Project Runway and America's Next Top Model, two popular competition shows for hopeful fashion designers and models. To win the title, America's Next Drag Superstar needed to show that they had the most charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent. Each episode starts with a mini challenge, a fashion photo shoot, for example, as well as a maxi challenge. On one episode, Drag on a Dime, RuPaul challenged the queens to create looks out of materials from a discount dollar store. As host, RuPaul plays double duty. He appears dressed in men's clothes to lay out the rules of the challenges, then later to check on the queens' progress in the workroom. Sorry. Ru asks the queens questions about their lives and what inspires them, and he gives them advice for how to perform well in the Maxi Challenge. After the challenges, the queens must walk the runway on the main stage in their best drag. RuPaul hosts this portion of the show in drag, having taken inspiration from actual supermodel Tyra Banks, the original host of America's Next Top Model. RuPaul plays every bit the tough critic, letting the contestants know exactly what she liked or didn't like about their looks and performances. Next, RuPaul discusses with her panel of judges, which since 2011 has featured her longtime friend Michelle Visage. Ru listens to everyone's thoughts on who were the strongest and weakest queens of the week, but ultimately the choice is RuPaul's. After Ru names the winner of the episode, she announces the bottom two drag queens, those with the lowest scores. These queens must lip sync to a song of Ru's choosing. Ru, the judges, and the other contestants are then treated to a dramatic drag performance. Finally, Ru must decide whom to eliminate. Borrowing lyrics from the song that made her famous, RuPaul tells the winner of the lip sync, "Shantae, you stay," and to the loser, "Sashay away." RuPaul carries his message of love to Drag Race too, and at the end of every episode, RuPaul tells the contestants, "Now remember, if you can't love yourself, how are you going to love somebody else?" Can I get an amen up in here? Amen. Other challenges on RuPaul's Drag Race have included the queens writing rap verses to songs, learning dance numbers, performing stand-up comedy, filming TV commercials, and hosting their own talk shows. Many of the things RuPaul himself had done over the years. Before they can even think about winning the crown, RuPaul's queens needed to work. RuPaul's Drag Race. Not many people tuned into RuPaul's Drag Race in 2009, but with each new season, the show gained more fans. In 2016, Drag Race won an Emmy Award, the first of many more to come, for its 9th season. In 2017, Drag Race moved from Logo to VH1, and its viewership doubled. Now it is regularly the most popular cable show in its time slot. In 2019, across cable, streaming, and online, the show was watched more than 190 million times. Over 13 seasons and counting, and more than 170 episodes of the show so far, fans have met drag queens from all corners of the country and from many walks of life. Hilarious queens like Bianca Del Rio and Bob the Drag Queen. High fashion queens like Raja and Aquaria. Accomplished dancers like Alyssa Edwards and Shangela. Kooky queens like Jinx Monsoon, and queens who sometimes dress more like monsters than glamorous women like Sharon Needles and Evie Oddly. These queens are teaching young people how to find their light and to shine in that light, RuPaul said. As the show's popularity skyrocketed, more famous celebrities appeared on the show as guest judges. Stars like Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, Christina Aguilera, Nicki Minaj, Neil Patrick Harris, and Adam Rippon, to name a few. And if you think RuPaul's star couldn't shine any brighter, hunty, she is just getting started. Oh, I thought it was almost done. Okay, Chapter 8, Work the World. RuPaul and his award-winning TV show have taken the world by storm. Ru continues to record new music and regularly features his songs like Cover Girl and Sissy That Walk on Drag Race main stage. He has published new books, Work in It in 2010 and Guru 2018, and has appeared in TV shows like The Simpsons and Ugly Betty. He also stars in his own scripted Netflix series, AJ and the Queen. RuPaul's Drag Race has also spawned spin-off shows, all of which RuPaul hosts and works on as an executive producer. On Drag U, women who feel like they've lost their sense of glamour and confidence are given drag makeovers and life lessons by drag queen professors. On RuPaul's Secret Celebrity Drag Race, famous men and women are put into drag by queens from the show. There have also been multiple seasons of RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars, a series in which queens who performed well on their seasons return to compete for a spot in the Drag Race Hall of Fame. The Drag Race phenomenon has also gone global, with international versions of the show airing in the United Kingdom, Thailand, Chile, and Canada. Drag Race queens have teamed up and toured the world together. In 2020, a number of fan-favorite queens, including Naomi Smalls and Asia O'Hara, starred in a live stage show that ran for more than a month at the Flamingo Las Vegas Hotel and Casino. In 2015, the first RuPaul's Drag Con, a convention for all things drag queens, and drag race, took place in Los Angeles. It expanded in 2018 to New York City, and in 2020 to London, England. Thousands of fans go to these conventions every year. At DragCon, fans can buy anything they need for a fabulous drag look, attend panel discussions, meet queens from the show, and watch drag performances. Some DragCon attendees come in drag themselves. Many of the fans are teenagers or younger. Parents come up to me and say the show helped them understand their queer child a little bit more. Michelle Visage said, "This little TV show has changed and saved so many people's lives. That's the revolution right here," RuPaul said of these young fans. "They are our hope for the future." In 2018, RuPaul was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Jane Fonda, one of Ru's childhood idols, presented him with the honor, but she said the star should be at least 3 sizes bigger because no one else has ever launched an industry like RuPaul has. Behind the glamour, she said, is a man of great depth, incredible intelligence, and compassion. People around the world have embraced RuPaul's message of self-love and respect. They have been inspired to express their creativity through the art of drag and to pay their naysayers no mind. Everybody say love. Wow. That was pretty long. I didn't realize it would take me that long to read this. But I love that, learning all about him. This is super interesting. Did you guys enjoy it? I think I might try to get some other of these biography type books. Anyways, I'm super tired, so I hope you guys have a great night, and I will see you soon. Bye.